Daphne, are you ready to go to Sesame Street?
Wait, what's the song? I can hear the tune.
Da 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 da.
Will you take me to Sesame Street? We're talking about Easy Street.
Yes, I saw the title today. Do we want to live on Easy Street? Life on Easy Street? Is that where we really want to live? And the first thing I thought of was Sesame Street.
Sounds like Sesame Street. Last week we had a couple callbacks too to like old commercials. Dunkin' Donuts, Rolaids, I think, made an appearance.
Yes, definitely. We're talking about the conditioned mind.
The conditioned mind. And today we might be actually discussing this a little bit through the lens of Ferris Bueller.
Welcome to Life, the ultimate choose-your-own adventure game with hosts Cliff Ravenscraft and Daphne Scott. Join this dynamic duo as they explore the profound concept of life as a thrilling adventure, blending ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Embrace the joy of living with presence, creativity, and playfulness. It's time to navigate the game of life together. Are you ready to play? Let the adventure begin.
All right, so Daphne, what did you think of when you were listening to the intro?
What stood out to me today was navigate life together.
Nice. Today, I thought of a blender. One of those big, heavy-duty ninja blenders, and inside of it, we're pouring in ancient wisdom and modern psychology.
I love it. We have to.
What are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about life on Easy Street. You know, I've just really, I enjoy our show every week and being with you, as I think you know, I hope you know. And this topic was born from last week's show, which the week's show before that was born from the week. You sort of drop these little things, you know, like, oh, that's a whole nother topic. I'm like, well, we're going to go there the next show. So this week came out of a comment you made last week about, something, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but something of nature, in the nature of like, we think, but do we really want life to be that easy? Like, is that what we really want?
Right. Yeah. Because it was a passing phrase of, you know, what people really want is life to be a little bit easier. And I'm like, or it was something like that. And I'm like, oh, but really? I don't know about you, but I know the people I work with don't really want it to be easy, including myself if I really look at it. Yeah.
And, you know, I've heard this statement, I don't want easy, I just want worth it. I can't remember where I heard that quote. And I've heard it a couple times.
I've heard it attributed to Maya Angelou. You don't need easy. I don't need easy. I don't need worth it. But I could be incorrect. I hear a lot of things attributed to Maya Angelou. So
yeah, no, that could be correct. I have no idea where it came from. I've heard it. And I thought, well, that carries some purchase for me. You know, I don't know that I always want things easy. So we're going to talk about it today. And I also, as I thought about this topic, and it's just so funny how things come to you. I thought of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I don't know why, but I think it was the character of Cameron that stood out to me, because I was thinking through this of sort of like, well, is it that we really want things easy? You know, is it that I'm trying to avoid a lot of discomfort in my life, which definitely can be a leaning that we can have, you know, that where we're trying to make things a little bit easier, we're using technologies. And we'll get into this. I'm giving you the whole outline of the show. And then I thought about, you know, but the statements are like, no one gets out alive, right? Like there's no way I'm going to avoid the challenges, or how I think of them, are sort of the 8 worldly winds, which we've talked about before, but praise and blame and pain and, you know, pain and pleasure and gain and loss and fame and disrepute, you know, sort of just the things that happen in life. I'm not immune to any of those as a human being on the planet. So how do I choose to address those? And I was thinking, for some reason, the character of Cameron came into my mind. And you had sort of this juxtaposition of Ferris, who was this upbeat, seemed to just be able to handle everything. And then you had Cameron, who just couldn't seem to handle anything. And his character says as much. And so I was just thinking through like the things that come into our world, and then the things that are somewhat self-imposed, like a goal. And I was, you know, creating these 2 paths of sort of how do we handle these different things? So what does that mean for challenge? Is it that we're trying to avoid all of that? And Cameron makes a comment Sloan, they're downtown Chicago, and Sloan, they're talking about going to college. And she says, well, what are you interested in? He says, nothing. And I thought, yeah, I guess if I never had a goal and nothing that I was interested in doing and nothing that I was interested in accomplishing, life might feel a bit easier in ways. It may it'd probably feel a little dry, but I guess if I really was truly interested in nothing and had zero goals and zero things that I wanted to achieve in a day, maybe it would seem easier. I don't know. So that's the full outline of the show. And that's what we're going to talk about. And how do we relate to this? Is it that we really want easy? Is that what we're really up to? And what does that mean to us? So
right.
That's the show.
Well, there you go. Tune in next week when we'll talk about. So for me,
I did think the juxtaposition of the characters was interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I think about do I really want life to be easy?
Yeah.
There are times when I'm experiencing life in a certain way that easy would be a nice respite. There would be some restoration that would be nice to experience if life were a little bit easier and it would let up in certain areas. However, I wonder if there's some correlation between do we really want life to be filled with pleasure and to avoid pain? And I would say that psychology says that yes, that's what the human mind is all about. We're trying to avoid pain and seek pleasure as much as possible. Yet, what I've recognized, there are some times when life is a little too easy, too predictable, too known, that it's not pleasurable for it to be so easy.
Yeah. The word that I similar experience, and the word that I would use that describes it for me is it feels dry. There's no juice in it, so to speak. There's no, it's like almost like a flat line. Which, flatline to me means you're dead,
Right.
So yeah, it feels a little dry to me. And I also notice, and I will bring in some stuff from psychology on this, because I think when we've talked about the book Flow, I think that Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi really hit on this when it comes to our certain skill level meeting up with a certain level of challenge. And I've noticed that when I'm feeling like things are easy, my skill level and the skill level is really high in life at that moment, or the challenge is really low. There's just nothing, and we can get more of the details of that. But yeah, it just can start to feel a little dry to me. So I don't know if easy is you said something too just a few seconds ago, there is a time when I'd like things to let up. Like I'd like to feel like I can get my head above water. Life's coming a little fast, right? So that's true, but I don't know that it would be that I want it easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So going with that, I think for me, as I evaluate it, and I haven't gone into deep thought on this topic. I know we threw it out there last week, and I knew that it was going to likely show up for this week. But as I hear that statement that I don't want it to be easy, there are some times when I want life to be easy, and then there are some times when I don't want it to be easy, and it comes and goes. It reminds me of the 6 human needs psychology that Tony Robbins teaches.
Yeah.
So first of all, let me just share what the 6 human needs are. It's stated that the first 4 needs are the needs of it's the psychological needs. It is the needs of certainty, that we can experience pleasure and avoid pain. There's uncertainty / variety. If we get too bored, we want that spice of life. That's what we were talking about just a moment ago. And then there's connection and love. There's significance. So those are the needs of the psychology. And then he says that the final 2 needs are the needs of the spirit. To truly feel fulfilled, you also need growth and contribution. But it's the first 2 that I want to focus on when it comes to this conversation of do I want it easy? The thing is we all have a need for certainty in our life, but we also have a need for uncertainty in our life. We have a need for both. And
Yes.
and in my way, in my mind, I'm initially offering that there is a correlation between the need for certainty would be a need for life to be easy, and the need for uncertainty, the need for a challenge or a little variety or a little uncertainty. Or I'd like it to be uneasy.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect lens to look at this through. Actually, I think you're just nailing it, because as you're saying it, I just notice my energy is like increasing, because I'm like, that's it. If I live in too much uncertainty, too much unpredictability, what starts to happen is my skills in that moment are probably being exceeded by the challenge. And that was where I would start. And I'm putting this through the lens of flow, which I think is absolutely it, with this idea of certainty and variety, or uncertainty, I guess, that then I can't meet the demands of what's occurring, my skill set, my ability to navigate. I just had this image of me being on a boat, and the waters are thrashing, and I'm not that great of a sailor in that moment, right? So I'm going to experience more anxiety, more probably mental disturbance, less calm probably in that moment, versus if I can meet those moments of variety, those moments of uncertainty, and my skill level is there, then I can get into greater excitement, right? And also the flow state, right? Where my skills and the challenge are meeting up. So I think that's a perfect way to talk about it, actually. It's when the uncertainty feels too great. Or the variety is too much, I guess, is another way.
Well, I love what you were saying there, because I hear that if the variety and the uncertainty goes to such a level that all of a sudden I start to feel a little panicked, worried, anxious, those all of a sudden begin to fire up those brain waves to a much higher level. We can get into that upper, higher beta brainwave states. And there we start to go into a little bit of a survival mode. It's like, there's danger here. And when we get into that danger, we don't have access to that prefrontal cortex that has the access to all the creative thought. That's where your skill access is. This is where your creative problem solution is, and all these other things. And so the question is how can we go through life where some of the challenges or the uncertainty or the uneasiness of life doesn't impact us emotionally in a way that throws us straight into anxiety, fear, worry, and doubt? So the question is it's not about, do we want life to be easy? It's that, can we grow in our ability to maintain equanimity in the midst of the uneasiness of life?
That's it. Tune in for next week's show. Because I think this is like so great. And I put this in the outline, I highlighted one of the things in our show notes, that when you listen to the theme, I think even in our show, right? Like playing this game of life, like when you listen to everything that we talk about, it can start to sound like, like, well, isn't that what we've been talking about, is how to make our life easier? And really the short answer is yeah. And more so also, more so recognizing, going a step deeper, I would say, or a level deeper, is yes, sort of, but more so it's how we engage with the stuff of life, how we engage with uncertainty and the unpredictability, and what I would come back to as the true impermanence of life. I think it's really true that we never have to worry about variety in our life. Really, it's going to come one way or the other, right? Like nothing's permanent. So it's going to come. And because we don't control everything in life, the uncertainty and the variety, I'm talking about the sort of non-self-imposed moments, that because that is the way of life, life is impermanent, then what we're really talking about is, okay, those moments, the seas will get choppy. It's probably coming. And then how do we have access to our best thinking, our highest states of consciousness, our best vibration, the greatest resonance, so that we can navigate those moments with greater ease? And I would say with greater skill, and I'd probably add to that also just with a greater way of being in the flow of life. versus being in resistance and going into the negative states of emotion.
I like that. So you stated there at the end to go through life with a greater sense of ease.
Yeah.
And you started that statement with saying isn't that what we're talking about? This whole game of life haven't we been talking about that we want to make life easier? And I think there's a difference between those two statements.
Totally.
It's for me, as I think about it, I'm not necessarily looking for life to be easier. However, what I'm looking for is with increasing levels of difficulty, I want to consistently up-level my ability to experience ease.
Yes. Well, and what I would say is also, why? Like, why does it matter if I experience greater ease in the face of challenges in life? Who cares? And my argument for that is the people around me, it really will matter to the people around me, right? I mean, I come back to this again and again. Why work on my state of consciousness? Is it just for myself? No, I'm going to interact with all the other humans, right? The more that I have access to my wisdom, the greater, deeper levels of thinking, it'll make it scientific, my prefrontal cortex, my, highest levels of vibration and resonance of my consciousness, then that hopefully will carry its weight out into the world. Those are those ripple effects. And that will be more meaningful just in everyone's life then. I had the image of just the oxygen mask on the plane, right? Put on my mask first. Now I can be of help to everyone and of service to everyone. So I think that comes back to like, why do we want to have this experience of not easy, but ease? And I think, Cliff, it really comes back to what you said. Like if I can have a state of my consciousness that even in the face of great challenge and uncertainty and impermanence, and have access to my best thinking, my deepest wisdom, my greatest intuitions, then I can be of greater service to the world too, and to the people around me.
Well, and I'm going to make it even more personal. So if I think about this, I am 50. I don't know if I'm 50 or 51. Quite frankly, I've given up on counting. But I'm one of those two. My wife and my kids tell me all the time, you're 50 something now. And I'm like, listen, in my mind, I'm still in my mid 30s. Just leave me alone. Age is just a number somebody randomly chose, and what they put a label on it. I don't buy it. True. However, what I will say is that I've invested 5 decades on this planet, and I've picked up some things that I've learned along the way about things that could have been easier than what I experience today. And there's I now have 3 adult children, and I have a wife, and I have a puppy, and I have a big, nice, beautiful home. I own a couple of cars. I have a lot of things in my life that are incredibly enjoyable, and I believe make the world a better place, especially my family and all this other stuff. But I can tell you right now, my life would have been a lot less difficult. It would have been a lot easier had I not got married and had I not had kids, had I not bought a big house, had I not owned all of these vehicles.
Yeah, interesting. It's so good. Like less responsibility, probably.
Well, think about this. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, for example, when my wife and I first got married, we were renting. All right. And when we were renting, we have a roof over our head. We've got a bedroom. We've got, we've got a kitchen. We've got a place to sit down and have entertainment. We have this protection from the element. Everything is wonderful. It's pretty easy. You pay the rent, you got the place. Now, if the place burns to the ground, if the place has a flood, all of this other stuff, we might be out a few things, but we just go find another place to rent. We go find another place. There's no concern for us to deal with deductibles for all of these things and to have this rebuilt and to do all of that stuff. Then all of a sudden we end up buying our first home. Okay, and so it's a brand new home, and there are things that go here and there and all this other stuff. But then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, now there's a greater sense of responsibility. We're responsible for mowing the lawn. All right, that's got to be kept up. There's all of these other things like maintenance on the house and the roof and all this other, now all this stuff, these things that need to be worked on. It's not just a quick phone call to somebody else to handle that. I'm the person who's responsible. And then when I go to this much larger home, there's a much larger responsibility. And so as I go, what I'm saying is that the things that I have today, the things that I manage today, I was not equipped emotionally to handle what I handle today with ease.
Yeah, that's so good.
I would have been buried under the weight of responsibility and overwhelmed by the difficulty of owning and operating in life at the level that I have today. So if you were to go back 20 years ago and say, Cliff, this is what your life is going to look like 20 years from now, I would have freaked out. I don't want that.
You're like, I have no business owning a house.
Well, but when it comes to the difficulties that come up, like for example, it's just the random stuff. It's like, okay, there's a big hailstorm that's coming through. There's birds that are climbing in through the little thing, the little vent, and they're making nests, and it's like all this other stuff. It's like, come on, can we get a break here? And I mean, some people understand that, there are certain things that go on managing all of this stuff, and there's a lot that goes into it, is what I'm saying. And what I love about life is that I've incrementally increased my difficulty. I'll give you a perfect analogy in my mind, a metaphor.
Okay.
So I'm not an avid gamer, but I have gamed quite a bit in my lifetime. And here's what I will tell you. There is nothing more unfulfilling than to get a game where you go online and everybody else in this game is an expert. You know nothing, and you log in and you're instantly killed or defeated. Instantly killed and defeated. Instantly killed and defeated. That is what I'm referring to. However, put me in campaign mode. I'm not competing against all the people who have been out there, learned all this stuff, know where to hide, know how to do this, know how to manage this, know what the strengths and weaknesses of this and that are, and they've learned a lot of skill to navigate all of those different options. But start me out on easy difficulty, level 1. And let me learn how to walk down the street with this character. Let me learn how to do this. Let me learn this thing. Let me learn this thing. And what I love is when I go through these games, and this is also true of puzzle games. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't have to be games where you get killed all the time. It's just puzzle games are like this. Start me out on an easy puzzle, and it's like, oh, well, that's easy. Oh, that was easy. Oh, that was easy. And then what I've done is I've got this one game where you have to do these things, and it's a grid of like 5x5, and it's really easy. But one day I went straight into it. It allows you to go as high as you want right in and try it out. And I went into grid 15x15. And I'm like, this is impossible. There's no way. However, what I can tell you, I'm on grids 9x9. And while I will tell you that a grid 15x15 is challenging, it at least looks possible and is doable. And I'm learning incrementally along the way. And so I'm finding greater ease with the 9x9s after having gone through 150 levels of the 5x5s, the 6x6s, the 7x7s, the 8x8s. This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it reminds me when I was learning to play poker, which I have just like this obsession with that game. Just, I love the thinking behind it. I love the math behind it. I love also, even online, you learn how people play. But I jumped into it in true Daphne fashion. It's not real money, thank goodness, but jumped all the way into one of the games and just, I mean, I was out every single time. Like, it was no fun. I wasn't even playing, right? It was the same idea. And then when you started betting more, then I was losing all kinds of money because I just didn't know how to play that well. So again, to your point, you just back down several levels, play at an easier level, you get your feet underneath you, your head above water, and now you're off to the races, right? So I want to go back to when you were talking about just responsibility and the responsibilities that you took on over time, right? Like you mentioned all these things in your life. And, there is something to be said, of course, and this is each individual person's, where they want to land in their life. There is something to be said for, quote, a life of simplicity, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe homeownership isn't.
I think we lost Daphne again. So before you lost your internet connection, you were talking about maybe not everybody is meant to be a homeowner.
Yeah. I mean, this is about the level of responsibility, right? So again, this gets into sort of that pillar I was talking about, like the self-imposed, how much we take on in our life as well. So there's navigating the unexpected, the uncertainty, and then there's also how much we actually take on. What type of, and I would put this in the bucket of learning, but what type of challenges do we want in our life? And maybe you decide that homeowner, as an example, I love that one, homeownership isn't for you. You're better off living in a condo, or you're better off renting. That's just not a challenge that you want to take on in your life. I also wanted to say that when they look at levels of life satisfaction, or more levels of happiness, which is a little bit different than life satisfaction, people who have children, they would rank their happiness sort of up here. And as they have children, there's this, they call it sort of the U. They drop down, and then as the children come a little bit older, their happiness levels get a little bit higher. That's an expected sort of thing, because there's a certain level of responsibility. I suspect a certain level of unpredictability. You have children, I don't, so you can probably speak to this. A certain level of uncertainty that feels a little bit more, a lot of uncertainty that comes with having children, that could maybe push us out of our skill level. We don't come into the world just naturally being parents, I don't think. So, they've looked at this, and it's sort of an expected thing. I think sometimes people are surprised by that, by the way. And the people that I've coached and worked with who have children are a little taken aback, like, wow, I don't know why my life feels like so much chaos right now. You have three children under the age of 8. It makes sense to me, So how much of that we take on at any one time too, sort of the self-imposed part of it, I think is also a part of living, and a part of what, and I would imagine, and for myself too, I own 2 homes, as a matter of fact. So what comes with all that, and a dog, and I have a wife and a family that I care about. And so what are the challenges that come with all of that? And I wouldn't change it for the world, and have learned a lot through that. So this is where, in the book Flow, he does such a great job of talking about, he uses an XY axis, our skill level being at one level, and our on that Y axis, and the challenge in our life living on the X axis. And what happens if, for example, our challenge is too low and our skill level is too high, then we go into apathy. This would be like you playing your video game and you always stay at level 1.
Yeah.
Right? Eventually you're just going to be like, this is boring. I can't, I don't really care about this.
Hold on. Yeah. So here's the interesting thing. I'm a completionist. I don't know. I'm sure you're familiar with the term.
Yes, I am.
I'm a completionist. And as a result of that, there are 150 levels of each of these different variations on this little puzzle game that I'm playing, right?
Yeah.
And each time you finish one pack, you have to start the next pack. But I had already gone from level 5x5 to 9x9. And for each pack for the first 5 packs all start with 150 levels of this 5x5 thing. And you can't go to the 6x6 and you have to, it's like, okay, I'm definitely not enjoying this. This is way too easy and it's causing me pain.
Yeah. Like this isn't enjoyable.
And that's right? What it's so is. But it's not, I get where you're saying. It's a little bit different. There are some people who would choose to stay at that easy level because it's known, and that could be a sense of apathy that might cause you to do that. But for me, it's just like, I want the check mark that says I did all of this.
I have to move on.
We'll talk about dopamine. No, I'm not going to say that. I don't want that to be next week.
Well, it does fit in with it, actually. It fits in with this whole thing. Getting those dopamine hits.
I know it does.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge part of it. It's a huge part of it. And yeah, we don't have to go into all of that.
I don't want to go into my neuroses next week is what I'm saying.
We all have a little bit of it, Cliff. No one gets out alive. So yes. And then when our challenge level, so then when our skill level is too low and the challenge level is too high, we mentioned that earlier, we'll get into a lot of anxiety, we'll get into worry. And it is starting to find, even at points where the challenge level is a little higher, but our skills are starting to meet it, we're not quite in the sweet spot. We experience some level of excitement too. So, we're trying to kind of finding that sweet spot, and then our skill level and the challenge level meet up at a certain point, and that's where we start to experience more of that level of flow, which when I thought about that, I was like, oh, I bet that's a little bit of what I feel like is a dance, where I have a skill level and the challenge, but they're kind of moving around just a little bit. So the challenge isn't staying, it kind of fits in with that variety idea. That the challenge, for example, I was riding I have a little 750 motorcycle. And, I've ridden motorcycles for quite a while. I'd say I'm more than competent. And I decided you can take it on a dirt road. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't do a lot of dirt road motorcycling. I'm usually on paved streets. So yes, my skill level of riding the motorcycle and navigating the motorcycle is great, but I changed the surface. Mm-hmm. So not so great on the dirt, right? So it was a different challenge level, and it was exciting to me. I didn't feel like I was going to, super hurt myself real bad or anything, or crash into anything.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. At the same time, it was slippery. It took a different level of balance and a different level of, navigating. And it felt exciting. So that was another, I thought about that yesterday. I was putting this together. I'm like, that's another great example of there was uncertainty there. I wasn't exactly, perfect at it. And it felt exciting. It didn't feel like I was getting too far outside. I definitely wasn't in my comfort zone, but I wasn't so far outside of it that it became overwhelming.
Right.
There was a lot of anxiety. Yeah. So not necessarily easy. And knowing where our sweet spot is, I think, is really helpful. I think this is where, having a sense of what are the goals that we want to take on in our life? What are the things that we, I imagine for, when you decided to have children, there was something around that for you, right? Like, oh, okay, I want to take on this level of responsibility. I know I want to have children. I think there's something here in my life. And when we make those choices very intentionally and conscientiously, then we probably feel a little bit more prepared for the uncertainty. Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing that stands out to me, as you talked about it's about finding that sweet spot. And what I notice is that we go into the fifth and sixth of those human needs. Growth is one of them. So growth is that our sweet spot of the challenges that we can face and handle, the amount of variety that we can take on, the amount of uncertainty, that grows over time. That sweet spot is we are gradually moving on. And the other thing that comes with that, when we grow and we are able to take on more responsibility, we're able to achieve more, get and create more and invest more. And that leads to the contribution, which is that sixth human need. Yes. And so a truly fulfilling life is one where there's growth happening and there's contribution as a result. So you're contributing as a result of your growth. Your contributions increase with the amount of your growth. But the growth doesn't happen if we're only certain, if everything's easy. So there has to be that challenge. And so for me, that's why last week I said, do I really want things to be easy? And so going to the title, Life on Easy Street, is that what I want? Yes, sometimes. But for short seasons. And I actually, the truth is, I'd like to vacation there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a minute. Just take a minute to be on Easy Street. It is nice. I mean, it is nice when things are flowing along and there's not too many challenges for a minute. Yeah. For a minute. What I notice about myself, Cliff, is you can guarantee, and I just notice about myself, I can do that for, if I put a timestamp on it, and it's the timestamp's always variable, but I can do that for maybe, I don't know, a week or two. And then I am off to the next thing. I am learning the next thing. I'm taking on the next challenge. I was talking to Bridget about this. We play golf. And I said to her, I just don't know that I'll ever be a person who can simply just go do something like that and not want to become better at it. I just, and I have friends that never take a lesson. They go out and play and, just kind of they really aren't that curious about learning anything new. I take lessons every summer. I have a guy that I've worked with to get better at, it's one of the things I love about the game is getting better at being in the sand, where I find myself more times than I'd like. I'm just going to consider the sand like the rest of the fairway and just get really good at hitting out of the sand. So I just don't know that it's in my DNA at times to simply not want to learn and become better at something.
Now
do it for a minute.
That's interesting because I am someone who has gone golfing. Well, I've gone golfing a number of times throughout my lifetime. So when I was a young adult, very early teens, my grandparents took me to upstate New York to their cottage in just outside of Syracuse, all this area. Anyway, it was beautiful up there, and their cottage was right across the street from a golf course, which we had access to. So there were golf clubs, and I went over. So I played golf a lot.
Okay.
Never once did it occur to me to try to get better.
I'm just going to do the same thing.
Not one time did it occur to me to try to get better. Now, it occurred to me to try to figure out, see if I can hit the ball and get it closer to that hole, and how many times does it take to do it. But it was just for me, it was fun. It was enjoyable. It was a way to pass hours as a 13, 14-year-old kid. And I'm like, this is fun. Now, the interesting thing is much later in life, young adult, and even, as maybe 10, 15 years ago is probably the last time I played golf. It's like, man, this is I love the beauty of the landscape.
I do too.
And I love driving around electric vehicles. Yeah. I could care less about swinging a little thing at a ball. I mean, it's like, seriously, let me drive the cart. And I always got weirded out. It's like, why can't we just drive this thing like in all over the place?
This is around town.
Exactly. So, but however, I am like, and I'm wondering, Daphne, if you think about it for just a second, are there other things in your life that you've gone and you've done it and you're like, yeah, this is enjoyable. I don't necessarily feel like I need to go and improve my skill in this, but wow, that was fun. So, because for me, what you said about golf, there are certainly countless other things that I have gone and done recreationally and just for fun that I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to know everything there is to know about this.
I certainly have. I mean, what came to mind, I went skydiving a couple times.
Okay.
I had no desire to get better at that or to learn more about it. The guy, it was tandem, and you could do so many tandem jumps, and then you could eventually learn how to, jump by yourself. I enjoyed it, for the couple times that I did it, but never had a desire to go, okay, I'm going to go all in on this and learn as much as I can about it. That's a great example.
That's why I wanted to point that out, because I was hearing you paint a picture of yourself. At least what I was hearing from you is, I'm not the type of person who goes and tries something that's not going to try to improve at this.
Well, not with everything.
And that's all I was looking for, is that distinction. Because I was wondering, it's like, how is that something that's unique to Daphne? Are more people like this? Because I'm like, there's a lot of things that I'm just like, I have no interest. It's like, I'll let that other people excel in that area.
Yeah, for sure. I was trying to think of other ones. And what I would say is true is it's like I can do an activity and definitely find some enjoyment in it. But if it's not something like, oh man, like I was just working on one of my essays around surfing. Now, what's interesting about that is that I had an instinct that when I did it and tried it the first time, that I would get hooked on it. And want to become better. I knew it before I even got in the water, and that was absolutely true. So, and I live in the Midwest, so how much do I get to actually go do it and become really good at it, right? I take advantage of it when I can and when I can travel, and I love it. So it's sort of two things there. One is I love the experience of it and the feeling of it, and I enjoy becoming better at it because that enhances the experience of it, right? If all I was doing was standing up and falling off the board every 2 seconds, that probably would not hold a lot of sway in my life in terms of the pleasure that I get from it. So other activities, and then there's just certain activities I try, and I'm like, yeah, that was a great experience, and I probably won't do it again. Like the skydiving would probably live in that one is one weird example. I'll have to think of more. I'm sure there.
No, you've done it. I mean, and I'm sure. I just wanted to make sure that people who are listening, is like, is that a thing that where it's like in every area you're always improving, you're always looking to go all in and do this? Because I think that could lead
Nothing
to
is always.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that could just lead to a life of overwhelm. There are tendencies that I've had. So, for example, one of the things that I've been doing lately is optimizing the way that I journal and take notes inside of Notion. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, I know that there are probably things that I could do to optimize this even further. There are things that I could tweak to improve the way that I'm doing this. I'm also very keenly aware that I am starting to get diminishing returns on the amount of time invested here. Yeah. And I have to ask myself, could I improve in this area? Yes. Would improving in this area increase my return on investment? No. And in fact, not only that, but I'm actually witnessing a lower return on investment because now I'm so obsessed with everything that I learn, every insight I want to document. And I'm like, no, why can't I just have an insight just for the insight? Why can't I just let it wash over me and just trust that if it came to me once, it will come to me again in the moment? Why do I feel this constant obsession with this? It's like, but I could do, and I'm like, just
calm down.
Breathe.
I got this. Well, you just sparked another thought. I would not have put this concept in this conversation, but there's this idea of people leaning to being satisficers and maximizers. And the gentleman who really wrote the book on this, I'll have to remember, I'll put it in the show notes. But, a satisficer can recognize like good enough. Like this is good enough. Like this thing that I bought is good enough. The notes that I just wrote down are good enough. Whereas maximizers look to get the 100% best maximum value out of anything, including how they're using their time.
Yep.
So they'll be looking for the best university or the best. And he gives this example of going to buy a pair of jeans. He goes into like a Levi's store and there are 50 different types of blue jeans. And essentially, he's like, if you could spreadsheet this out, he's like, there's too many variables. You can't possibly maximize and find the very best, fill in the blank, whatever it is. And I think in our life that can be true, right? To your point, like if I truly was, every activity I did was like, oh, I have to learn everything about this and be the best at this or get better at it, it would be incredibly overwhelming. And I definitely have a maximizer leaning into my personality if I'm not careful. I had to learn the process and the art of good enough. This is good enough. It sounds good enough. It's good enough. We're going to get this where it needs to go and move forward because I definitely can lean into the maximizer if I'm not careful. And I just heard that with your note taking, there's something over there where you can lean into that if you're not careful too.
Right. And I can even tie this in. I know that's a separate topic from what we're talking about, life being easy, but I can tie it in because here's what I've got. I've got some great templates on things that I can do, and I've got a place where things are a little bit more challenging for me to accomplish on my iPad versus my desktop or laptop, and sometimes it's much more convenient just to carry my iPad with me. So here's the thing. When I get a YouTube video, I want to grab the thumbnail the creator usually used so that it shows up in my gallery view as a thumbnail, which is nice. I want to actually, so I want to download that and have it in here. I want to actually grab the video and the audio file from that. So I want to download that, put it in here. I want to get the transcript and I want to copy it and put it here. And I want to do all this. And right now I've got this great method of doing this. And I know that it would be easier if I invested about 4 or 5 or 6 hours teaching myself some of these automated AI workflows that would do all the things that I've now decided this is how I want the process to be, I could just give it a YouTube video and it would do all of that for me.
No.
But here's the thing. Do I really want it to be easy? And I know this is even off the topic even further, but the answer is no, I don't even want that. Even if I invested that, because here's the other thing. The act of actually going through some of these processes and copying and pasting and looking and reviewing to see if the summary is the way that I want it and all this other stuff, it's just helping me to linger on this content much longer. And so the amount of time spent doing all of this stuff, even if AI is summarizing the transcript, I'm seeing the summary, I'm copying the summary, pasting the summary, and I'm reviewing it real quickly, and then I'm moving on.
Yeah.
Whereas I wouldn't actually gain as much if I just grabbed the URL and said, click this, boom, and it just puts it into my journal.
You're bringing up bringing us right where I wanted to go with this too, the conversation around, for example, I love my garden in the summer and I love all the flowers and I love watching the plants grow. I could hire someone to do all of that. I don't really have to plant my own garden. I could probably get somebody to come do it. But I spent 4 hours yesterday, right? Getting the tomato plants in the ground, pruning up some of the flowers, taking care of the flower beds yesterday. It's the process. Like there is something to that instead of automating it by having another person do it in this instance, right? AI hasn't gotten there yet. It might. But I could hire someone to do that. Sort of what you're talking about. Like I could, that would be one version of delegating it or automating it, however we want to talk about it. But I enjoy the process. I enjoy the feeling of digging in the dirt. I enjoy feeling what it's like to get the plants in the ground, the water. Having my muddy hands, cleaning them up, and all the things that go along with it, and then watching that all grow.
Do you also enjoy pulling out the weeds that would attempt to choke out the growth of what you've planted?
Yes.
See, that's what I'm talking about. These things are so much a part of life that it's a part of the process. It's a part of the journey. It reminds me of the metaphor of this. So my wife and I, we sold our old home just over 10 years ago when we built this home. And we had a big boatload of money that came in as a result of all of the stuff that we had to do financially so that I could afford to build this house. And I was thankful to have an online business that allowed me to do that. So we had this big bucket of cash from the sale of our original home, and we took a 2-week family vacation to Europe. And we flew to Edinburgh, Texas, and we flew home from Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And we had 2 weeks to figure out how to go from Edinburgh all the way down to London, then to Paris, and then back up to the Netherlands so that we could be there for our flight home. That was our challenge. Now, I will tell you right now, there was a lot of obstacles. There were a lot of challenges along the way. And let me just say this, it would have been a lot easier to stay home. It would have been $20,000 cheaper to stay home. And here's the situation. Our whole thing is, okay, we're gone for 2 weeks. We start here and we go here. And what's the end destination? That we're home. Well, we're already here. Why don't I just stay? It would be easier.
There's a whole bit on this. He's like, we're getting ready to go out. Now we're out. Now we got to go back home. Why do we even go out?
So the whole thing is that why go anyway? Well, you know what? We did experience some challenges. We even had some interesting disagreements as a family of 5 in various places where meltdowns occurred. That it was just, we had one situation where there were bed bugs in one of the Airbnbs and we had to find a hotel and all this other stuff.
I remember this.
I remember
you telling me about that.
We had all sorts, but you know what we do have? we went through all of that. And I will say this, there were times it's like, I wish we wouldn't have come here. You know, some folks, I didn't have that, but several people did. But I'll tell you right now, all 5 of us look back at those 2 weeks and just what we experienced was out of this world. And it was worth all of the difficulty. It was worth all of the uneasy things that we did to experience 2 weeks in all of those different countries.
Yeah. And it is crazy. Like it is. So that situation. And then I've, read stories of, for example, soldiers in a time of war, like their life in extremis, right? In my world, that would be just like extreme for me. And the camaraderie, the connection, or people going through big challenges, that you can come together. And people will often, I was reading a story from a woman who, it was about 9/11. And she lost, I think it was her daughter in 9/11. But the moments that she talked about were the moments where her family came together. Like there was this community bonding that was happening. And she said, although I would obviously never want to go through that much level of loss or wish that on anyone, there were so many beautiful moments that she does miss. She was commenting on this, that she did miss sort of in this extreme challenges of life. And there's moments that can bring us together. And I think that's why connections showed up for me at the beginning of the show. It's like, we're all doing this together. And so when we have these challenges that we share with one another, whether it be on a trip like that across Europe or the more extreme examples of it, we do find something often in those challenges and the connections that we have with the other human beings. So even though we think we definitely like our moments of easiness, we also find that in these moments of challenge, we in overcoming those challenges, we find some depth into it. A story just came to mind when I was training to be a physical therapist. I had the opportunity to work in a spinal cord rehabilitation unit. And I will never forget this one patient. His name was Mark. And he had a car accident, and he was paralyzed, lower level paralyzed. So he could use most of his upper body. He could use his arms still, but he couldn't use his legs anymore. And I watched him, and I was there 12 weeks, and I watched him in about 10 go from being this person who, was really facing it. This was a very active person, going from being this person now who had to go through all these challenges. And by 10 weeks, he was up in straight leg braces and able to hold himself, and then was already on the path of figuring out how he was going to get himself to drive again. And I just, we didn't have a lot of deep conversations about his satisfaction with life, but you could just see this in his family connection. His family was there every single day with him, his brothers and his sisters and his parents. And, he was probably 28, and he wasn't quite 30. And, just watching him go through on this path and where he was going in 10 weeks and taking on that challenge. And again, they've reported this, that people go back to the same satisfaction levels that they had before. They're taking on these challenges and getting so much connection out of it. So I think those moments, those are just, again, in extremist moments, right? But I think we also find a lot of gifts in those moments as well.
Yeah. So that reminds me of a quote from Napoleon Hill, and I wanted to look it up, and I found it here. He said in Think and Grow Rich, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or even greater benefit.
Yeah, that's so good. And so coming back to Cameron and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, he said he was interested in nothing. But do you remember the challenge? Like, he had family challenges.
I've watched Ferris Bueller probably about 4 times in my life, and I think the last time was about 25 years ago. Okay. So I just remember Cameron's the one whose dad had the car, and and it got driven through the back window and destroyed. Yes. And his moment of truth, the moment of his character, was the car gets destroyed, and he finally says, no, because Ferris is going to cover for him. Right. Ferris like, I'll take this. And he's like, no. He's like, at this point, I'm going to take a stand. I do remember that. Yeah.
Remember that? And you watch Cameron, his character, that was the moment, the arc for his character. It's like, I'm going to take a stand for my life. I'm going to stand up to my dad. I'm going to stand up to this, family challenge and, all the things that he had, not being able to find himself and all these sorts of things. And so even in that moment, I was thinking about his character. He didn't want life to be that easy either.
Yeah.
Even though, he claimed to be interested in nothing, clearly he was interested in being Ferris's friend. So he's interested in something. And he finally got to this point of like, I'm going to take on this challenge, because he could have just continued to, his life was in that vein of just sort of easy in some ways. He lived in this crazy house. Everything was given to him in that way. But there was this emotional part of his life that was very unfulfilling to him. So yeah, I thought it was a great example of not living life in the extreme for him, whereas Ferris's character could have seemed a little bit that direction, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. But Cameron's character, I thought, was just a perfect example. And then he finds the place that he's going to take on a challenge, which was probably somewhat unnecessary for him. He could have just continued on the path that he was on.
Yeah. Or could he?
Or could he? Obviously, he didn't, or wasn't going to, according to the story. How the story played itself out. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it speaks to that human need. It's like, listen, I need this. Yes. That's why he chose that challenge. That's why he put a stake in the ground. No, I'm going to own this. I'm gonna stand up for myself. I need this. Is in essence what he said. I need this. I need this.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a stand. Yeah. So I just, as I was thinking about life on Easy Street, I'm like, not even he who claimed in many ways that he couldn't handle the challenges of life.
Well, and I also want to say this. I am very familiar with a lot of people who on the outside look like they experience the easy street kind of lifestyle.
Sure. Yeah, like their feet don't touch the ground.
Exactly. And everything they touch turns to gold, and they just seem to have everything they could ever want. And what I will tell you is there's not a single person on this planet that I've ever met, and I've met many people who appear to live on Easy Street. There's not a single person out there who doesn't struggle with the same fears, anxieties, worries, doubts as every other person on this planet.
Absolutely.
There's
enough people. Same thing.
There is plenty of appearance of people on Easy Street, but what looks easy comes with a lot. There's a lot of weight to the easiness that you're witnessing, and what you're not witnessing is, I mean, just one example of, you think about people who win the lottery or whatever. And there's a lot of people out there. It's like, listen, I will never sign my name to this. I will never do this, blah, 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 because I don't want anybody to know. Because a lot of people who have won the lottery, who quote unquote are going to have it easy financially for the rest of your life, their life is nothing but warding off all of the people who want to swindle them, take advantage of them. It shifts and changes everything. And so there's for every single person out there, there's always some level of challenge. And what I find interesting is like, well, I would like to be, it's like, I understand you're saying it's not so easy. It's like, but I'd like to give it a try for a little while. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't, but and if you really wanted to, you would have it.
Yeah, I think that's such a great example, and I think that's absolutely true. You change one thing, and when I said that about your feet doesn't touch the ground, I know plenty of people who are absolutely millionaires, well over millionaires status, many, many, many times over, and the challenges are just different. Not only in terms of managing, all the things that come with that level of wealth, but also there's a particular way that you can become very no longer in touch with life. And that that carries its own challenges, where it seems like a lot of doors are just opening to you because, people are just nice. And it's like, well, no, actually you have power and status, and maybe they actually want access to that. It just comes with its own, and I think you said it perfectly, with its own sets of challenges. And it's worth, at least I'll say for myself, always being aware of that just because it seems like people have it all figured out. No one has it all figured out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I will say this. I think that we all are incredibly abundant, and so many things in our life do happen, and they come easily to us.
Yes.
If we can focus our mind and our attention on those things. A life of abundance if we have air in our lungs and our heart beats and we woke up this morning, we are all living in an incredibly abundant life. And so many things of ease that comes our way is just unfathomable. I just think, Daphne, the fact that I've never lived on a farm where I need to plant and raise food, and I'm not required to have this garden, and just, I've never had a day in my life where I had to go without food. It's always available, and it's from all over the places, and just everything that is available. It's just amazing.
It is amazing.
So,
now you're going into that space of, real gratitude. I think this is, I think what can come with some of the wanting to avoid the challenges of life is also, I think it's tangled in there, sort of the lack of gratitude and appreciation for how much simplicity we really do have access to. Let me say it that way. Yeah.
Not only simplicity, but also just how much there is to be thankful for at any given time. It's just like, it's always there. Yes. And at some level, I think about somebody who lives an ascetic life. What, by the way, comes with its own incredible challenges. Right?
Yeah.
Yet the thing is that, everyone is on their own path. And this is one of the things that I love about our show is I just want to wrap my last thought on this topic of, what is easy street? Do we really want to live there? Do we really need, we need goals for growth and so for contribution. The thing is your growth, your contribution doesn't have to be home ownership like Daphne was talking about. You don't have to own a business. You don't have to get married and have kids. But the thing is at some level, there is going to be challenges in your life. There will always be challenge in your life. You can always choose to resist that challenge, or you can rise up to it. And as you rise up to it, the things that overwhelm you today will be easy for you 5-10 years from now. Yet in 5 to 10 years from now, there'll be more new difficult challenges for you to face. And that will always happen until you no longer wake up in the morning.
I think that's perfectly stated. Which you're talking about learning and growth.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Perfectly stated. I have nothing else to add.
Do you have a call to action?
I do. So I want to draw people's attention to my writing on Substack. So I'm posting a new essay about every other week now. So I'm probably going to stay in that rhythm. But I'd love for people to wander over there. It's at DS Leadership Life. And really what I'm writing about is I'm coming through the intersection of work and life, similar to what we're doing on the show here, but definitely writing more towards the work life, but also sharing parts of my life, which I haven't. So through my own experiences and how I'm blending the, again, modern psychology and ancient wisdoms and how I'm taking that through the stories of my life and how I've applied those, and especially in leadership and in work. So if you're a person who has experienced a lot of burnout, more challenge and less skill, I put it that way, I think the writing that I'm doing over there is going to be really, really helpful. And it's gearing up for something that's going to make an appearance in the fall with a new platform that I'm working on and new content for everyone to really support people's transformation and support everyone on their journey as they're navigating the working world and wanting to thrive in the 9 to 5. So it's at DS Leadership Life over on Substack. So join me over there.
Sweet. And my call to action is for anyone who is a coach on the professional coaching path, meaning that you want to make a full-time living from the coaching that you do. I have a program called the Next Level Coaching Program where I talk about the art and business of coaching. So we not only cover how to operate and run your business from software to frameworks for client acquisition and all of those things, but also techniques, tools, strategies, and frameworks to share with your clients so that they get the transformation you want them to experience. Upping your game, taking it to the next level. It's called the Next Level Coaching Program, and you can find that at professionalcoachingpath.com. Again, that's professionalcoachingpath.com. And
I'll put it in the show notes.
Sweet. Until next time, we encourage you to
choose your own adventure.
There we go. Love it.